marriage counselor could see my browser history at 3 in the morning, they'd probably call emergency. Not because of anything perverted, just the sheer desperation of a man Googling how to tell if your wife is cheating while she's supposedly at another overnight business conference. I'm Aidan Locke, 42 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Nice house in suburban Millbrook, Massachusetts, successful IT consulting firm, and a wife who still turned heads at the grocery store. Tessa and I had been married 8 years, together for 10. She worked her way up to PR manager at Voss & Associates, the biggest advertising agency in our little corner of New England. The front door clicked open downstairs, and I quickly closed my laptop. Tessa wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow morning. "Honey, you awake?" Her voice drifted up the stairs, slightly breathless. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. "Yeah, up here in the office." Her heels clicked across the hardwood as she climbed the stairs. When she appeared in the doorway, her usually perfect blonde hair was slightly mussed, and her lipstick was gone. She wore that navy business suit I'd helped her pick out last Christmas, the one that cost more than my first car. "Didn't expect me. Don't worry, I won't bite, unless you ask nicely." She tried for playful, but something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Conference ended early?" I kept my voice neutral, watching her fidget with her purse strap. "The client presentation went better than expected. Figured I'd drive back tonight instead of staying at that awful hotel." She touched her neck absently, then caught herself. "You know how I hate sleeping in strange beds. Funny thing about being married to someone for 8 years. You learn their tells." Tessa touched her neck when she was nervous. She also had a tiny birthmark just below her left ear that I'd kissed 1,000 times. Tonight, that birthmark was partially covered by what looked suspiciously like a bruise. "Long drive from Hartford," I said, still watching her face. "Traffic wasn't bad." She turned toward our bedroom. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed?" "In a few minutes. Want to finish up some client emails?" She paused in the doorway, and for a moment I thought she might say something real. Instead, she just nodded and disappeared down the hall. I sat there in the dark, listening to the shower run, my mind racing. The conference was in Springfield, not Hartford. I'd booked her hotel myself through my travel rewards program, the Marriott on State Street, definitely not awful by any stretch. 20 minutes later, I crept into our bedroom. Tessa was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her purse sat on the dresser where she always left it, unzipped and careless. The woman who organized her sock drawer by color had left her purse wide open. Inside, nestled between her usual wallet and makeup bag, was a phone I'd never seen before. Small, cheap, the kind you buy at a gas station. My hands shook slightly as I picked it up. The screen lit up without a password. Either Tessa was getting sloppy or she wanted to be caught. The text thread at the top made my blood run cold. Carter. "Can't wait to have you all to myself next weekend. That thing you did with your tongue." Tessa. "Aiden suspects nothing. He's always been weak." Carter. "Good. Weak men make the best losers." I scrolled up, my stomach churning. Months of messages. Photos I never wanted to see. Plans made in my house, probably while I was downstairs making her coffee. Carter Voss, senior partner at her agency. Married to some socialite named Patricia, who organized charity galas and looked like she'd never sweated a day in her life. The messages painted a picture I couldn't unsee. Hotel rooms I'd unknowingly paid for. Business trips that were anything but. Late nights at the office that involved a lot more than PowerPoint presentations. But it was the casual cruelty that cut deepest. The way they laughed about me. Called me weak, boring, predictable. Made jokes about my receding hairline and the 15 pounds I'd gained since we got married. Tessa. "He actually thanked me for working so hard. Said he was proud of me." Carter. "Pathetic. When are you going to leave him?" Tessa. "Soon. Riley's helping me document everything. We're building a case." Riley. Tessa's best friend since college, who'd been coming over for wine and girl talk every Thursday for the past 3 months. Who'd been so sympathetic about our marriage troubles and encouraged Tessa to do what makes you happy. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and slipped back to my office. My hands were steady now, my mind crystal clear. If there's one thing 20 years in IT had taught me, it was that information was power. And Tessa had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. I opened my laptop and started typing. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them what a weak man could do when he put his mind to it. Well, this just got interesting. The next morning, Tessa was all smiles and coffee kisses, playing the part of the devoted wife. She even made me scrambled eggs, something she hadn't done in months. I was thinking we should plan a vacation, she said, sliding the plate across our kitchen island. Maybe that trip to Napa we've been talking about. I took a bite of eggs that tasted like sawdust. Sounds great. When were you thinking? Maybe next month. I'll have some flexibility after the Morrison account wraps up. The Morrison account that had been finished for 3 weeks, according to the company newsletter I'd started reading religiously. Amazing how much you could learn about your wife's job when you actually paid attention. I'll look into flights, I said. She kissed my forehead before leaving for work, and I almost believed the performance myself. Almost. 20 minutes after her car disappeared down Maple Street, I was in my truck heading to Mick's garage on the other side of town. Mick Torino had been my roommate at UMass and was still the only person I trusted completely. He'd built his father's 2-bay operation into the most successful independent shop in 3 counties, mostly because he was honest in a business full of sharks. I found him under the hood of a BMW, cursing creatively at some German engineering decision. "Aiden, what brings you to my palace of broken dreams and overpriced parts? I need a favor, the kind that requires discretion and possibly some equipment that might not be entirely legal." Mick slid out from under the hood, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better decades. He was built like a linebacker who discovered beer, with arms like tree trunks and a face that had stopped a few punches in our college days. "This about Tessa? What makes you say that? Because you look like a man who just found out his dog has been going to the bathroom in his slippers. Also, my wife saw her at Rossetti's last Tuesday, very cozy with some suit in a corner booth. Figured you knew. Asterisk, asterisk. I'd forgotten that Millbrook was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Population 12,000, and at least half of them were professional gossips. "I need to put some surveillance on her car. Nothing illegal. Just want to know where she's going." Mick nodded slowly. "GPS tracker's easy enough. What else? Audio would be nice. That's where we get into gray areas, legally speaking. I'm not planning to use it in court, just want to know what I'm dealing with." He studied my face for a long moment. "This is going to get ugly, isn't it?" "Probably. Good. I never liked her anyway. Too polite, you know? Like she was always calculating the angles." We spent the next hour installing a small GPS unit under Tessa's Lexus and a voice-activated recorder in her visor. Mick assured me both devices were virtually undetectable and would give me real-time location data plus audio whenever someone was in the car. "Just promise me you won't do anything stupid," he said as we finished up. Define stupid. "Homicide, arson, anything that would require me to lie to the cops. I'm not planning to end anyone." Planning's the key word there. Heat of the moments when people make bad decisions. I drove home and spent the rest of the day setting up what I privately called my war room. The spare bedroom had always been Tessa's home office, but she'd moved most of her work stuff to the agency months ago. Now it became my command center. I installed tracking software on my laptop, set up a dedicated email account, and started building files on everyone involved. Carter Voss was easy to research. His face was all over the agency website, and he'd been featured in several local business magazines. Married 22 years to Patricia Whitman Voss, daughter of a federal judge. 2 kids at expensive private schools. Big house in the historic district, country club membership, the works. Riley was harder to pin down. Riley Chen worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm, divorced, no kids. She'd been Tessa's maid of honor at our wedding and had always seemed genuinely friendly. Apparently, I'd been wrong about that too. The GPS tracker started feeding me data around 5 p.m. Tessa's car left the agency parking lot and headed not toward home, but to the Hilton Garden Inn on Route 9. She stayed there for exactly 2 hours before driving to a wine bar in the next town over. The audio recorder captured everything. "God, I needed that." Tessa's voice came through my laptop speakers, slightly breathless. 2 hours wasn't enough." Carter's voice was deeper than I'd expected, with a slight Boston accent. "When can we get a whole night?" "Aiden's got that client dinner Thursday. I could tell him I'm staying late to finish the Henderson proposal." "Perfect. I'll get us the suite at the Marriott downtown." "The one with the jacuzzi?" "Only the best for my girl." I had to pause the recording. My girl, like I didn't exist. Like 8 years of marriage was just some inconvenient detail to work around. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, mostly logistics and planning, with a few graphic details about their afternoon activities that I could have lived without hearing. But it was the end of the recording that really got my attention. "Riley thinks we should move faster on the divorce papers," Tessa said. "What's the rush? You said he doesn't suspect anything. He doesn't, but she's worried about the financials. Aiden's been moving money around lately, restructuring some business accounts. She thinks he might be planning something. I almost laughed out loud. I'd been restructuring accounts, all right, moving everything into entities that Tessa had no legal claim to. My business attorney had suggested it months ago for tax purposes, but now I was grateful for the foresight. How much are we talking about? Carter asked. The business is worth maybe $500,000, plus the house, savings, retirement accounts, probably close to $800,000 total. Not bad for a computer nerd. Don't underestimate him. Aiden's smarter than he looks. That's why we need to be careful. Too late for that, I thought. The recording ended with them making plans for Thursday night. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, I'd been a faithful husband with a successful business and a wife I adored. Now I was a man with a mission. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing, Operation Crossed Wires, Phase 1, Complete Intelligence Gathered. Affair confirmed, ongoing for at least 3 months. Co-conspirator, Riley Chen, gathering evidence for divorce proceedings. Primary meeting locations, Hilton Garden Inn. Route 9, various restaurants. Next planned meeting, Thursday evening, Marriott Downtown Suite. Assets secured. Business accounts restructured and protected. Personal accounts being moved to separate institution. Real estate deed review with attorney scheduled. Next steps. Document all meetings and communications. Identify additional co-conspirators. Gather evidence of any illegal activity. Plan public exposure strategy. I saved the file in an encrypted folder and leaned back in my chair. If Tessa thought I was weak, she was about to learn otherwise. In my business, we had a saying, the best revenge is a life well lived. But sometimes the second best revenge was watching your enemies destroy themselves. And I was just getting started. Thursday evening arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made you think of football games and apple cider. Tessa left for her late meeting at 6, kissing my cheek and reminding me not to wait up. The Henderson proposal is going to take all night, she said, her performance flawless as always. I waited exactly 30 minutes before following the GPS signal to the Marriott downtown. Sure enough, her Lexus was parked in the executive level of the parking garage, right next to Carter's silver Mercedes. The audio recorder picked up their reunion in vivid, nauseating detail. I listened just long enough to confirm they were settled in for the evening, then drove back home to continue my research. What I found made my blood boil. Buried in the company's public filings was something interesting. Voss and Associates was opening a new branch office, and they were throwing a launch party Saturday night. Black tie, invitation only. All the local business elite would be there, including, according to the guest list I'd managed to acquire, my dear wife and her lover. More importantly, I'd discovered something that Carter and Tessa apparently didn't know. The investment group that owned 60% of Voss and Associates had recently been acquired by a larger holding company. A holding company that I'd quietly purchased a controlling stake in 6 months ago as part of my retirement portfolio diversification. Technically, I was Carter Voss's boss. He just didn't know it yet. Saturday night, I put on my best tuxedo, the one Tessa had made me buy for her cousin's wedding last year, and drove to the Millbrook Country Club. The party was already in full swing when I arrived, the ballroom filled with the kind of people who thought their net worth was a measure of their character. I spotted Tessa immediately. She wore a stunning red dress that I'd never seen before, probably bought for Carter's benefit. She was holding court near the bar with Riley and a cluster of agency executives, laughing at something Carter had just said. Carter looked exactly like his photos, tall, silver-haired, the kind of artificially confident bearing that came from a lifetime of privilege. He had his hand on the small of Tessa's back, a gesture casual enough to seem innocent, but possessive enough to mark his territory. I grabbed a scotch from the bar and positioned myself where I could observe without being noticed. The conversation was exactly what I'd expected from this crowd, boring shop talk mixed with subtle bragging about vacation homes and private schools. "Don't let him near the hors d'oeuvres," Carter said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "He'll eat the company out of business." He was talking about Derek Morrison, the nervous middle manager who'd apparently committed the sin of going back for seconds at the shrimp cocktail station. The comment got the expected chuckles from the sycophants surrounding Carter. But it was Tessa's reaction that surprised me. Instead of the polite smile I expected, she laughed genuinely, like cruelty was the funniest thing in the world. "Some people have no self-control," she added, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound sophisticated. I watched Derek's face flush red as he retreated from the buffet table. He was probably making $40,000 a year and had 3 kids at home, but sure, let's mock him for eating free food at a company party. That's when I noticed something else. Several people were looking at me, whispering. I'd been so focused on watching Tessa and Carter that I hadn't realized I'd become the evening's entertainment. "Isn't that Tessa's husband?" I heard someone say. "What's he doing here?" Poor bastard probably doesn't know. The whispers followed me as I moved through the crowd. Apparently, Tessa and Carter hadn't been as discreet as they'd thought. In a town like Millbrook, secrets had a shelf life of about 15 minutes. I was contemplating a strategic retreat when Carter himself approached, Tessa on his arm like a trophy. "Aiden, what a surprise! I didn't know you were invited." His smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Last-minute addition to the guest list," I said. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Tessa looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Honey, I thought you had that client call tonight." "Canceled. Figured I'd come support my wife's big night." I smiled at Carter. "Congratulations on the new branch. Must be exciting to expand." "Well, when you're good at what you do, growth is inevitable." Carter's chest puffed out slightly. "Of course, not everyone has the vision for this kind of success." "Vision's important," I agreed. "So is knowing who you're really working for." Something flickered in Carter's eyes, but before he could respond, the agency's managing director took the microphone to begin the formal presentations. I endured 20 minutes of self-congratulatory speeches about market penetration and synergistic solutions, watching Tessa and Carter bask in the applause. When Carter finally took the stage, his speech was everything I'd expected: arrogant, condescending, and completely tone-deaf. "Success in this business comes down to one thing," he declared: "knowing your place in the hierarchy. Some people are leaders and some people are followers. Some people have vision and some people just follow orders." His eyes found mine in the crowd, and his smile turned predatory. "The key is making sure everyone understands their role." The applause was enthusiastic, particularly from Tessa, who was beaming like he just cured cancer. When Carter returned to our little group, he was practically glowing with self-satisfaction. "Great speech," I said. "Really inspiring stuff about knowing your place." "Glad you appreciated it." "Oh, I did, especially the part about following orders. Speaking of which," I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "I think there's something you should know about the hierarchy." Carter glanced at the phone and his face went white. On the screen was the corporate structure of his agency, with ownership percentages clearly displayed. At the top of the chain, highlighted in bright yellow, was my name. "What is this?" he whispered. "This is me knowing my place," I said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Turns out my place is at the top of the food chain. The conversations around us had stopped. People were staring, sensing drama, but not understanding the specifics yet. Tessa grabbed my arm. "Aiden, what are you doing?" "Just having a conversation with my employee." I looked directly at Carter. "Did you know that when Meridian Holdings acquired your parent company last month, I became your ultimate boss? Funny how these things work out." Carter's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Around us, the whispers were starting again, but louder now. "I don't understand," Tessa said, but her voice had lost all its confidence. "It's simple, sweetheart. Remember all those boring conversations about diversifying my portfolio? Well, it turns out I diversified right into your boyfriend's company." I turned back to Carter. "Which means I have access to all sorts of interesting information. Expense reports, for instance." Carter's face had gone from white to green. "Now wait just a minute. The Hilton Garden Inn, Route 9, charged to the company account as a client meeting. Except there was no client meeting, was there? Just you and my wife billing your affair to the shareholders." The circle of people around us had grown larger. Someone had definitely started recording with their phone. "That's not—" "I can explain," Carter stammered. "Oh, please do. I'd love to hear how screwing another man's wife constitutes a legitimate business expense." I pulled out a folder I'd been carrying. "I've got receipts going back 3 months, hotels, restaurants, even a weekend at the Cape Cod resort, all billed to the agency." Tessa was pulling at my sleeve now, her face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Stop it. You're making a scene." "Am I? Because it seems to me like the scene was already made. I'm just providing the soundtrack." Carter tried to recover, drawing himself up to his full height. "This is highly inappropriate. Whatever personal issues you're having." "Personal Issues? I laughed, and it echoed off the ballroom's high ceiling. Carter, you've been stealing from your own company to finance your midlife crisis. That's not personal, that's criminal. You can't prove anything. I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Expense reports, credit card statements, hotel receipts, all with your signature, all for personal use. I looked around the room at the faces staring back at us. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you your senior partner, a man who literally charges his adultery to the company credit card. The room erupted. People were talking, laughing, pulling out phones. Carter looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, but I wasn't done yet. Tessa, darling, you might want to start updating your resume, because as of Monday morning, there are going to be some significant changes in the agency's personnel structure. She stared at me with a mixture of hatred and fear that I'd never seen before. You bastard. Probably. But I'm a bastard who owns your boyfriend's company. I smiled at the crowd. Enjoy the rest of the party, everyone. I know I will. I walked out of that ballroom feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting, voices raised, accusations flying, the sound of Carter's career imploding in real time. In the parking lot, I called my lawyer. Harriet, it's Aiden. I need you to draft some termination letters and possibly some criminal referrals. How many letters? I thought about Carter's smug face, about Tessa's casual cruelty, about all the whispered conversations and stolen moments they'd thought I was too weak to discover. Let's start with 2 and see where it goes from there. This was just the beginning. Sunday morning brought 3 things: a massive hangover despite drinking only 2 scotches, 17 missed calls from Tessa, and a visit from Riley that I'd been expecting since the moment I walked out of the country club. I was in my workshop, ostensibly organizing my tools, but really just trying to keep my hands busy, when she knocked on the front door. Through the window, I could see her pacing on my front porch like a caged animal. We need to talk, she said the moment I opened the door. Riley Chen was smaller than Tessa, with sharp features and an intensity that had always made me slightly uncomfortable. Today, she looked like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. About what? Don't play dumb, Aiden. What you did last night was cruel and unnecessary. I stepped aside to let her in, curious to see how this would play out. Would you like some coffee? You look like you need it. I don't want your coffee. I want you to fix this mess. What mess would that be? She followed me into the kitchen, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood. Carter's been suspended pending investigation. Tessa's been reassigned to some junior account manager position. You've destroyed 2 careers because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt? I poured myself a cup of coffee, taking my time with the cream and sugar. Is that what we're calling it when your wife of 8 years has been screwing her boss and billing it to the company? Marriage is complicated, Aiden. You wouldn't understand. Because I'm weak? That stopped her cold. What? That's what Tessa told Carter. That I was weak. That I'd never figure it out because I'm just some boring computer nerd who doesn't deserve a woman like her. Riley's face flushed, but she didn't deny it. She was frustrated. People say things when they're frustrated. People also do things when they're frustrated, like help their best friend document evidence for a divorce, like encouraging her to drain joint accounts and hide assets. How did you know about that? Riley, I've been in IT for 20 years. You think I don't know how to monitor my own financial accounts? I leaned against the counter, studying her face. The question is, how much of this was your idea? She tried to maintain eye contact, but couldn't. Tessa needed support. She was unhappy. So instead of suggesting marriage counseling or honest conversation, you helped her plan an affair and a divorce. That's some friendship. You don't understand what it's like being married to someone who doesn't see you. See her? I saw her every day. I saw her ambition, her intelligence, her beauty. I supported her career, encouraged her dreams, gave her everything she said she wanted. I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. What I didn't see was that she decided I wasn't good enough anymore. Riley shifted uncomfortably. People grow apart. People grow apart. They don't usually steal from their employer to finance the process. Carter made a mistake with the expense accounts, but that doesn't mean 3 months of mistakes, hotel rooms, dinners, weekend getaways, all billed as business expenses. That's not a mistake, Riley. That's theft. She was quiet for a moment, probably calculating her next move. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder, more calculating. You need to be careful, Aiden. Is that a threat? It's advice. Tessa has documentation of your behavior over the past few months. The surveillance, the financial manipulation, the stalking. A good lawyer could make a case for harassment, maybe even misuse. I almost laughed. Surveillance? You mean the GPS tracker on a car that I pay for, registered to an address where I live? The financial manipulation of my own business accounts? The stalking of my own wife? A jury might see it differently. They might. Of course, they'd also see the evidence of Carter's embezzlement, Tessa's complicity, and your role in planning the whole thing. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Amazing what people say when they think they're not being recorded. Her face went white. You recorded us? I recorded my wife, in my car, which I own. Perfectly legal in Massachusetts as long as one party consents to the recording. I smiled. Guess who the consenting party was? Riley stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. No, it's not, because you haven't heard the best part yet. She paused in the doorway, and I could see her debating whether she really wanted to know. The documentation you helped Tessa gather? The evidence of my controlling behavior? I know about all of it because I've been monitoring her computer for weeks. Every email, every document, every late-night strategy session you two had. I took a sip of coffee. Did you really think you could out-tech a tech guy? The color drained from her face completely. That's illegal. Monitoring my own home network. Accessing files on a computer I bought and maintain. Riley, you really should have consulted a better lawyer. She left without another word, but I could hear her making phone calls before she even reached her car. Damage control mode had officially begun. I spent the rest of Sunday reviewing the evidence I'd gathered and planning my next moves. The confrontation with Riley had been satisfying, but it was just an appetizer. The main course was still coming. Monday morning brought the first real retaliation. I was in my home office working on a client proposal when I heard a car pull into my driveway with more aggression than necessary. Through the window, I saw Carter climbing out of his Mercedes, his face flushed with anger. He pounded on my front door like he was trying to break it down. Open up, Locke! We need to talk! I took my time getting to the door, stopping to grab a baseball bat from the hall closet. Not because I was planning to use it, but because Carter looked unstable enough to try something stupid. What can I do for you, Carter? He pushed past me into the house, his expensive suit wrinkled and his usually perfect hair disheveled. You son of a witch. Do you have any idea what you've done? Exposed a thief and an adulterer? Yeah, I have some idea. I've been with that company for 15 years. 15 years of building relationships, developing clients, creating value, and you destroyed it all in one night because you're too weak to keep your wife satisfied. The baseball bat felt heavier in my hands. Careful, Carter. You're in my house now. Your house? This pathetic suburban box that you're probably going to lose in the divorce? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tessa's going to take you for everything you're worth. Is she? Because last time I checked, she was the one facing potential criminal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud. You can't prove she knew about the expense accounts. Can't I? Because I have recordings of her discussing the hotel receipts, the dinner charges, even the weekend at the Cape. She knew exactly where the money was coming from. Carter's face went through several shades of red before settling on purple. You recorded private conversations? I recorded my wife in my car discussing criminal activity. Any prosecutor in the state would call that evidence. You think you're so smart, don't you? Sitting in your little office, playing with your computers, thinking you can manipulate people like they're lines of code. I don't have to manipulate anyone, Carter. I just have to document what they're already doing. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath at 10 in the morning. This isn't over. No, it's not. Because you're going to resign from the agency quietly and without severance, and you're going to stay away from my wife. Or what? Or I release the recordings to the district attorney, along with all the financial documentation. Massachusetts takes embezzlement seriously, especially when it involves amounts over $10,000. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Harriet Sloan, criminal defense attorney. Should I call her and ask what the sentencing guidelines are for your particular crimes? Carter stared at the phone for a long moment, his breathing heavy. When he looked back at me, his eyes had changed. Less anger, more calculation. What do you want? I want you gone. Out of the agency, out of the state, out of my life. Take whatever golden parachute your daddy-in-law can arrange and disappear. And if I don't? Then we'll let a jury decide whether screwing another man's wife on the company dime constitutes a legitimate business expense. He stood there for another minute, probably running through his options and not liking any of them. Finally, he turned toward the door. "This isn't over," he said again. "Carter?" He paused with his hand on the doorknob. "If you ever come to my house again, if you ever threaten me again, if you so much as drive down my street again, I will make what happened at the country club look like a love letter. Are we clear?" He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. The slam of my front door was response enough. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for several minutes, making phone calls. Probably to his lawyer, possibly to Tessa. Definitely to someone who was going to tell him that his situation was even worse than he thought. 20 minutes later, he peeled out of my driveway like a teenager having a tantrum. I went back to my office and opened a new document. Operation Crossed Wires, Phase 2, complete objectives achieved. Carter confronted and neutralized. Riley's involvement documented and exposed legal threats countered with superior evidence. Tessa's position at agency compromised collateral damage. Carter's career effectively ended. Agency facing potential criminal investigation. Personal relationships in social circle destroyed. Next phase, though, document any further retaliation attempts. Prepare for divorce proceedings. Plan final public exposure. I saved the file and leaned back in my chair. The house felt different now, like a fortress instead of a home. But that was fine with me. If Tessa and her allies wanted a war, I was more than ready to give them one. The phone rang. Mick's name appeared on the caller ID. "You need to see the news," he said without preamble. "What news?" "Channel 7. They're doing a story about financial irregularities at advertising agencies. Guess whose face is all over the screen?" I turned on the television just in time to see Carter's professional headshot filling the frame, while a reporter discussed allegations of embezzlement and fraud at a prominent local business. I smiled for the first time in days. Sometimes the best revenge was just letting people destroy themselves. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. The news story changed everything. By Tuesday morning, Carter's face was on the front page of the local paper, and by Wednesday, the story had been picked up by the Boston media. "Advertising executive accused of using company funds for affair" was the headline that pretty much ended any chance Carter had of salvaging his reputation. Tessa, meanwhile, had gone into full damage control mode. She'd moved out of our house Monday night, taking only her clothes and personal items, and was staying with Riley while she figured out her next move. The few times we'd spoken had been brief and venomous. "You've destroyed everything," she'd said during one particularly heated phone call. "My career, my reputation, my future. I hope you're satisfied. Your career destroyed itself when you decided to help your boyfriend steal from his own company. I just provided the documentation. You know what you are, Aiden? You're pathetic. A small, petty man who can't handle the fact that his wife found someone better." Better? He's a thief and a liar who's probably going to prison. If that's your definition of better, you're welcome to him. But the call that really got my attention came Thursday morning from an unexpected source. Patricia Voss, Carter's wife. "Mr. Locke, this is Patricia Voss. I believe you know my husband." Her voice was cultured, controlled, the kind of upper-class Boston accent that came from generations of private schools and country clubs. "Mrs. Voss, I'm sorry for your situation." "Are you? Because from what I understand, you're largely responsible for it." I chose my words carefully. "I'm responsible for documenting criminal activity and adultery. Your husband is responsible for committing them." "I see. And my understanding is that you have recordings of these activities?" "I have evidence, yes." There was a long pause. "Mr. Locke, I'm going to be very direct with you. My husband is a fool, but he's my fool, and I don't appreciate having my private business splashed across the evening news." "I didn't contact the media, Mrs. Voss." "No, but you created the situation that led to the coverage. Now I'm going to make you an offer." "I'm listening. I want copies of everything you have, every recording, every document, every piece of evidence. In exchange, I'll make sure that Carter disappears from your life permanently." Define permanently. "He'll resign from the agency, we'll relocate to our house in Florida, and you'll never see or hear from him again. He'll also sign any legal documents your attorney requires regarding your divorce proceedings." I thought about it for a moment. What's in it for you? Control of the narrative. Right now, I'm the wronged wife whose husband was caught stealing to finance his midlife crisis. If I have the evidence, I can decide how much of it becomes public and how much remains private. And if I refuse? Her laugh was cold as winter. Mr. Locke, my father was a federal judge for 30 years. My brother is the district attorney for Suffolk County. My family has been practicing law in Massachusetts since before the Revolution. Do you really want to find out what happens if you refuse? It wasn't exactly a threat, but it wasn't exactly not a threat either. I'll consider your offer, I said. You have 24 hours. The line went dead. I sat in my office staring at the phone. Patricia Voss was offering me exactly what I'd wanted. Carter gone, permanently, with legal guarantees. But something about the conversation bothered me. She was too calm, too controlled, too willing to negotiate. I called Harriet Sloan. What do you know about Patricia Whitman Voss? Dangerous question. Why? She just made me an offer I'm not sure I should refuse. Patricia Whitman comes from serious money and serious power. Her family owns half of Beacon Hill and has enough political connections to make your life very difficult if you cross them. But she's also pragmatic. If she's offering you a deal, it's probably because she thinks it's the best outcome for everyone involved. Should I take it? That depends. What do you want more? Revenge or results? I thought about that for a long time after I hung up. Revenge was satisfying, but results were permanent, and Patricia Voss was offering me permanent results. I called her back that afternoon. I accept your offer with conditions. I'm listening. Carter signs a confession detailing his embezzlement and his affair. He also signs an affidavit stating that Tessa had no knowledge of the financial irregularities. Why would you want to protect her? Because I don't want her to go to prison. I just want her out of my life. Anything else? He pays restitution to the agency for all personal expenses charged to company accounts, and he stays out of Massachusetts permanently. Done. I'll have the documents prepared by tomorrow. One more thing, Mrs. Voss. Yes? I'm sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess. Her voice softened slightly. Thank you, Mr. Locke. For what it's worth, I think my husband is an idiot for risking his marriage for someone like your wife. The papers were signed Friday afternoon in Harriet's office. Carter looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week, his usual arrogance replaced by the hollow-eyed stare of a man who'd lost everything. He signed every document without reading them, probably just grateful to avoid criminal prosecution. Patricia Voss was everything I'd expected. Elegant, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in the way that only old money could be. She reviewed each document carefully before nodding her approval. The moving truck will be at our house Monday morning, she told her husband. I suggest you use the weekend to say goodbye to whatever friends you have left. Carter didn't respond. He just sat there staring at the table. Mr. Locke, Patricia said as we prepared to leave. I hope this resolves your situation satisfactorily. It's a good start. A start? I smiled. I still have a wife to deal with. Saturday morning, I was in my workshop when Tessa finally came home. I heard her car in the driveway, heard the front door open and close, heard her heels on the hardwood as she walked through the house. She found me in the garage where I was organizing tools I'd already organized 3 times that week. We need to talk, she said. I didn't look up from the workbench. About what? About what happens next. I thought that was obvious. You file for divorce, we divide our assets according to Massachusetts law, and we go our separate ways. It doesn't have to be ugly, Aiden. Doesn't it? I finally turned to look at her. She was still beautiful, still perfectly put together, but something had changed. The confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. I know you're angry. Angry? I laughed. Tessa, I'm not angry. Angry is what you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic. This is something else entirely. Then what is it? It's clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I can see everything clearly. She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, the same scent I'd bought her for our last anniversary. I made mistakes, she said. I know that, but we can work through this. Can we? Because last time I checked, you thought I was weak, boring, and pathetic. Your exact words, if I remember correctly. Her face flushed. You were recording me. I was protecting myself. Turns out it was a good decision. Aiden, please, I know I hurt you, but Carter's gone now. It's over. We can start fresh. Start fresh? I set down the wrench I'd been holding and gave her my full attention. Tessa, you spent 3 months screwing another man and planning to divorce me. You helped him steal from his own company? You enlisted your best friend to gather evidence against me for a custody battle we don't even need to have because we don't have kids. You called me weak and pathetic and boring to a man who was using company money to pay for hotel rooms. I was confused. You were calculating. Every move, every lie, every betrayal was carefully planned. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. She was quiet for a moment, probably trying to figure out her next angle. What do you want? She finally asked. I want you to sign the divorce papers. I want you to take your personal belongings and leave. I want you to never come back to this house. Never contact me except through lawyers, and never ever pretend that what you did was some kind of mistake or confusion. And if I don't? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Then I released the recordings to everyone we know. Your family, your friends, your co-workers, everyone at the country club. Let them hear exactly what you think of the man you married. Her face went white. You wouldn't try me. She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't, and something in my expression must have convinced her. Fine, she said, but I want half of everything. You'll get what Massachusetts law says you're entitled to. Nothing more, nothing less. The house will be sold and the proceeds divided. You can find your own place. My car is in your name. Keep it. The business is mine. Completely. You have no legal claim to it. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. I'll need time to find a place, she said. You have until the end of the month. That's only 2 weeks. Then you'd better start looking. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. You know what, Aiden? You are weak. A strong man would have fought for his marriage. I smiled. A strong man would have married someone worth fighting for. The look on her face was worth every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every second of pain she'd caused me. She left without another word. I went back to organizing my tools, humming quietly to myself. For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern, nursing a beer and watching the local news when Riley walked in. She looked around the bar like she was expecting an ambush, spotted me in my usual corner booth, and walked over with the kind of determined stride that meant trouble. Mind if I sit? It's a free country. She slid into the booth across from me, her face tight with barely controlled anger. You got what you wanted. Carter's gone, Tessa's moving to her sister's place in Springfield. Why can't you just let it end? I took a sip of beer, considering my answer. What makes you think it hasn't ended? Because I know you, Aiden. You're not the type to let things go. You're right, I'm not. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. What's it going to take to make this stop? Stop what? The harassment, the surveillance, the constant threat of exposure. I almost laughed. Riley, I haven't harassed anyone. I documented criminal activity and adultery. I haven't surveilled anyone since Carter left town. And the only person I've threatened to expose is my soon-to-be ex-wife, and only if she tries to screw me in the divorce. Then why do I feel like I'm being watched all the time? Probably guilt. It's a powerful emotion. She sat back, studying my face. You really think you're the good guy in this story, don't you? I think I'm the guy who got cheated on, lied to, and stolen from, and decided to do something about it instead of just rolling over and taking it. Tessa made a mistake. Tessa made a choice, multiple choices over multiple months. The only mistake was getting caught. Riley was quiet for a moment, probably trying to decide whether to keep pushing or cut her losses. She's broke, you know, she said finally. The legal fees, the security deposit on her new apartment, having to start over. She's working as a receptionist at a dentist's office. Good. Maybe she'll learn the value of honest work. Jesus, Aiden. When did you become so cruel? About the same time my wife started sleeping with her boss and billing it to the company credit card. Riley flinched like I'd slapped her. You can't let go of the anger, can you? Why should I? The anger is what got me through this. The anger is what gave me the strength to fight back instead of just accepting that my wife decided I wasn't good enough anymore. She never said you weren't good enough. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through the audio files, and hit play. Tessa's voice filled the booth. He's so boring, Carter. Everything is routine with him. Same job, same hobbies, same conversations. I feel like I'm suffocating. Carter's response. You deserve better. You deserve someone who appreciates what he has. Tessa again. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd never married him. I could have been someone important instead of just the wife of some computer nerd nobody cares about. I stopped the recording and put the phone away. Riley's face had gone pale. She was venting, Riley said weakly. She was planning. There's a difference. What do you want from her, Aiden? What would it take for you to consider this finished? I thought about it for a moment. I want her to understand what it feels like to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted. I want her to know what it's like to be humiliated in front of everyone you know. I want her to experience the same sense of betrayal and powerlessness that I felt when I found that phone. And then maybe I'll consider us even. Riley stood up, her face hard. You're not the man I thought you were. No, I agreed. I'm not the man anyone thought I was. Turns out that's been my advantage all along. She left without another word, and I went back to my beer and the news. The lead story was about a local business owner who had been arrested for tax evasion. Apparently, the IRS had received an anonymous tip about unreported income. The man's photo looked familiar, and it took me a moment to place him. Derek Morrison, the nervous middle manager Carter had humiliated at the agency party. I smiled. Sometimes, karma worked faster than expected. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday morning in November. Tessa showed up to the courthouse, looking like she'd aged 5 years and 2 months, wearing a cheap suit that was a far cry from her usual designer wardrobe. Her lawyer was a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My lawyer, Harriet Sloan, had prepared a settlement that was fair but not generous. Tessa got half the value of the house after it sold, half of our joint savings account, and her car. I kept the business, my retirement accounts, and everything else. This is robbery, Tessa's lawyer said, reviewing the documents. This is Massachusetts law, Harriet replied calmly. Your client has no legal claim to business assets that were established before the marriage and maintained separately throughout. Tessa signed the papers without looking at me once. When the judge declared our marriage officially dissolved, she walked out of the courtroom without a word. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt empty. That evening, I was back at Murphy's, celebrating my freedom with a whiskey that tasted like regret, when Mick slid into the booth across from me. How you holding up? It's done. Finally done. Good. You ready to move on with your life? I looked around the bar at the familiar faces. Guys I'd known for years. People who'd watched the whole drama play out like it was their personal soap opera. Most of them had taken my side, but I could see the calculation in their eyes. How long before Aiden gets back to normal? How long before he stops being the guy whose wife cheated on him and becomes just Aiden again? I don't know, I said honestly. I've been so focused on winning that I never thought about what comes after. After is living your life. Dating again, maybe. Finding someone who deserves what you have to offer. Maybe. Mick studied my face. You're not done, are you? What do you mean? With Tessa. With all of this. You've got that look like you're still planning something. I took a sip of whiskey, considering how much to tell him. She's working at a dentist's office in Springfield, answering phones, making appointments, probably making $12 an hour. Good for her. Honest work builds character. She's living in a studio apartment above a pizza place, drives a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door. Aiden. She shops at thrift stores now, buys generic groceries, clips coupons. You need to stop. Stop what? Keeping track of her, monitoring her life, planning whatever you're planning. I met his eyes. She destroyed 8 years of my life because she was bored. She stole from me, lied to me, humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. And you want me to just forget about it? I want you to let it go before it destroys what's left of you. What if I don't want to let it go? Mick was quiet for a long moment. Then you're going to end up just as miserable as she is, and she'll have won after all. I finished my whiskey and stood up. Maybe. But at least I'll have company. Outside, the November air was sharp and clean, cutting through the fog in my head. I walked to my truck, started the engine, and sat there for a moment thinking about Mick's words. He was probably right. The smart thing, the healthy thing, would be to move on. Find a new relationship, focus on my business, build a life that didn't revolve around revenge and anger. But as I drove home through the empty streets of Millbrook, past the country club where it all started, past the agency where Tessa used to work, past all the places where my old life had slowly died, I realized something important. I didn't want to be smart or healthy. I wanted to be thorough. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a moment, looking at the house that would be sold next month, thinking about the woman who used to live there and the choices she'd made that led us both to this point. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and started typing. Operation Crossed Wires, Final Phase Objective, Complete Social and Professional Destruction. Timeline, 6 months methods, to be determined. I saved the file and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I would start planning the final act of this drama. Tonight, I would sleep better than I had in months, because Mick was wrong about one thing. Tessa hadn't won. She'd just given me more time to make sure she never could. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just getting interesting. But that's a story for another day. For now, it was enough to know that the weak, boring, pathetic husband she'd married was gone forever. In his place was someone much more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to make sure his enemies understood the consequences of their choices. Turns out, the underdogs got teeth. And I was just getting started.